Hello and welcome to Age Podcast. My name is Badr Abdullah and I'm a specialty doctor in gastroenterology, currently working at University Hospital Landock as part of Cardiff and Vale University Health Board. I am the communications lead for WAGE, also known as Welsh Association for Gastroenterology and Endoscopy, and my role is alongside Sarah Owens, who's a clinical endoscopist working in Swansea. This will be the first of many podcasts at the series called WAGE Pod. And for our inaugural podcast, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. John Green, our WAGE president, who started his tenure back in October 22. He's a consultant gastroenterologist in Cardiff and Vale University Health Board since 2001. He's a bowel screening colonoscopist and a former clinical director for gastroenterology. He's also the C21 Deputy Programme Director and Clinical Reader for School of Medicine in Cardiff University, the clinical lead on the National Endoscopy Programme in Wales, and the ex-chair for the Service Accreditation Group of the JAG in RCP London. Dr. Green, welcome to the podcast.
Badr, thank you very much indeed. I'm really honoured to be part of this inaugural podcast from WAGE and would like to thank you and Sarah for your initiative in putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think a great place for us to start would be to ask you if you can say a few words about our immediate past president, Hayley Heard, who you've worked with as her vice president for WAGE over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure to do so. Thanks, Badr. For the last couple of years, I was vice president and worked with Hayley. And I think WAGE has a big debt and a big thanks to pay to Hayley for the work that she's done during her tenure as president. She has made and instituted a number of changes in the organisation in terms of the structure, the constitution, and also things like our terms of references for all the posts on the exec and the way that we function day to day. So she's helped to sort of move WAGE on as a profession. And I think that will give a long legacy for her time as president. But also Hayley's a great role model and a good person to work with in terms of her professionalism and her approach. And I think was a great figurehead from WAGE during her last 2 years. So I think we all pay her a debt and a big thanks for what she's achieved during that time. And
I couldn't agree more with you, really. I've been lucky enough to work under Hayley as president, with yourself as vice president. I've learned a lot from her as a leader. She's assembled a great team, listens to everyone, and has definitely moved WAGE years into the future.
Yeah, I really agree.
Now, I wanted to ask you about our most recent conference in October 22. And what did you find were the highlights to you personally?
I really enjoyed the meeting, actually. I think it was great. We did have a face-to-face meeting in Cardiff in last spring, but this was our sort of first face-to-face autumn meeting. And it also had a hybrid component as well, which I think is sort of the way forward for meetings in the future, is to combine some of the, being able to get together as a group, which is always good for educational and some degree of social purposes as well, is fantastic. But giving the opportunity for people who can't make the whole meeting to join in from their workplace for part of the meeting is really valid. And I'm sure that's the way that we need to continue to go in the future. I had lots of highlights, actually. It was difficult to choose one particular one that I'd go for. I thought the venue was really good. I thought the ICC is a real professional place to hold WAGE, and I think it'll give WAGE a good image. Particularly, we've got speakers coming from outside, so I think that was a good benefit. I thought the programme was great, actually. It's nice to have a mixture of local people who in Wales to showcase some of their work. So I enjoyed Jonathan Sutton's talk on fecal transplantation, which opened your eyes and made you realise the sort of work Jonathan's done a lot of, and I think we all learned stuff from his talk. And I thought it was great also that the fact we can now link in with outside speakers. So we had two talks which I remember greatly. One is from Alex Ford, who also spoke at this Cardiff Spring meeting on functional dyspepsia, and which was great. He's a very prolific writer and researcher. And I thought the talk from Andy Tower was probably my highlight, at Blood and Guts, his tag on Twitter. He's from Austin, Texas, and he presented some amazing videos of how he approaches GI bleeding. And I guess if I had to say one thing, if you push me to one particular highlight, for me, I've also got a role, as well as my role as a gastroenterologist, I have a role in medical education, an undergraduate. And I thought it was fantastic to see a load of medical students at the meeting who were enthusiastic, and their presentations were quite amazing. So it's something I want to continue to grow in the next few years, giving the students a chance to platform and show off their work to a wider audience. So that's probably my one, if you had to push me a highlight, but I think there was lots of good stuff there.
I agree with you. I think the talk from Andy Tower was quite interesting, just to see the new and innovative ways that he's developed in managing upper GI bleeds, the new tips and tricks that I wasn't aware of before. Simple things really, like using bone wax at the tip of your catheter before using hemospray was a really good tip. And for the medical students, it was really amazing the amount of abstracts that we've received. And if I'm not wrong, I think we've received more abstracts from medical students for this year than all the other categories.
Yeah, and what we did is we actually gave them sort of, we put them into different cohorts of presenters. So it was sort of fair. We had good presentations from registrars and juniors who work in gastro and surgery. We had some really good presentations from nurses and associates, allied healthcare workers, and the students. So yeah, you're right.
And next up, I really wanted to ask you a much broader question. Is you've started your tenure back in October 22, and what are you looking forward to achieve within the 2-year period as wage president?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm actually really proud to take this role on. Actually, it was one of the things I wanted to do for quite a few years. I was very grateful to be involved in Wage, really as a sort of an audience member from the very beginning, from the time that Miles Allison had the concept and the initiative to set up Wage, and enjoyed going to the meetings along the years. And I'm very proud to work in Wales, and I'm very proud to be a gastroenterologist and endoscopist. So it was one of my things I wanted to do, and I'm delighted to have been elected to do the role. When I came up for election, there was a few things I wanted to achieve during the role, which I intend to do the next couple of years, my manifesto, as it were. One was to sort of take Wage around Wales a little bit more, which I think would be a really good thing. So our next meeting in March is in Swansea. We've decided to go back to the ICC in Newport again for the October meeting. And then my plan next year is to go up to North Wales. So it's the first time in Swansea and North Wales that we've been outside of South East Wales and the metropole where we used to have our meetings. So I think it's really healthy to do that. And what I want to do is combine a good meeting with opportunity to stay in a nice hotel and have a nice meal for the spring meetings as well. So that was one of my things I wanted to do, was to make Wage more of a all Wales organisation. The other things I think is really important, particularly given the medical and political climate we're in at the moment, where morale is really very challenged in the health service because of economic reasons and political reasons, which I won't go into too much depth, but I'm sure we're all aware of it. We've got nurses and junior doctors who are very rightly protesting about the remuneration for their work, and obviously strikes underway and ongoing at the moment, and consultants with pension issues as well. So I think morale is a difficult thing, and I think what Wage can do is be a cohesive force to join us together. It's a vehicle for us to meet and talk and socialise, which is great, but also form networks across the country. And secondly, I think we do have an increasing importance as a specialist advisory group, which has been recognised by the Welsh Medical Committee, and gives us the opportunity to sort of input to a whole range of important national initiatives. So recently Wage has been involved with things like giving evidence to the National Endoscopy Inquiry, and I'm going there to give verbal evidence in a couple of weeks. We've also input into other things like letters regarding the liver framework, and we've sort of a whole range of things which we're sort of involved with in campaigning for. So I think that's another really important and growing importance for Wage to do that as well, really. So yeah, that's my main thing, really, taking Wage around Wales, building on and continuing the excellent education reputation we have, and we continue to provide free education meetings, which is something which I don't think any other group do at all. In fact, I don't know any other group nationally who give free educational opportunities and sponsorship to their members too. So that's something I'm very proud of as well, and the representative role, which I think is really important.
Thank you, Dr. Green. I can already see the fingerprints of what you want to achieve has started 6 months ago with your tenure. And just to say on behalf of myself and Sarah, we're very excited to work with you over your tenure, just to see what we can achieve together as a team and how we can push wage forwards into the future.
I'd say, Barry, the other thing I didn't mention, which would be remiss if I don't, would be say that we've got a really good exec team actually. So we've had a whole sort of change round in exec offices, and I'm very fortunate to work not just with you and Sarah, but also with Uma Kant-Dave as vice president, with Jonathan Sutton as professional secretary, with Rodri Stacey as our treasurer, and Rachel Edwards as nurse and allied healthcare professionals lead. So we've got a fresh team from all over Wales. And I think we've worked together well, and I think that also makes the present role really a very enjoyable role and hopefully a very productive role.
Definitely. I wanted to move on to ask you about our next conference that's upcoming on the 22nd of March. That will be held at the Swansea.com Stadium within Swansea, obviously. But I just wanted to ask you what you're looking forward in that conference, and what are the most important topics that you would invite our members to attend the conference for?
Yeah, it's I think it's on Wednesday, March the 22nd. Is that right, Bader? I was getting the 22nd
Yes.
and 23rd wrong. I think it's 22nd.
Yes, it's the 22nd.
There's a BSW training session which everybody's invited to join in remotely as well, so which is worth considering. But we decided after a consideration a few months ago, it'd be really good to have a focus on GI bleeding and hemostasis. So patients presenting with GI bleeding, and we obviously come across a lot of patients who are at risk of and actually do bleed during endoscopic procedures. So there's been a lot of developments in equipment that we can use during endoscopy, which can benefit our patients, but probably isn't being widely used across Wales. So things like Danis stents, over-the-scope clips, as well as cryograspers and the sprays and powders and things that are around nowadays to help patients. So our idea, which is a bit of a new one again for Wage, we're outside South East Wales. We're in Swansea for the day at a really good venue. I was at the venue a couple of weeks ago, and it's a really good venue. So we're going to do a couple of plenaries. We've got 4 sort of outside speaker talks, and 2 of them being done remotely again. The video conferencing being a benefit from the COVID era and carrying through. We've got talks on liver disease and bleeding. We've got a talk from an old friend of mine in Edinburgh who's gives a good talk and gives some good video clips about how to use some of the new equipment that we're going to focus on during the day. And then what we after those 2 plenaries and plenty of time for questions and answers, I've made sure the agenda's not too cluttered. We've got some hands-on opportunities, and we want to focus on getting a good number of endoscopists from across Wales, but also endoscopy nurses. We're going to proactively encourage and support endoscopy nurses to attend for free at these meetings, and they can come along from each unit and do some hands-on opportunity with some of the equipment I've mentioned and some other areas as well. So there'll be a chance to rotate around 4 stations and do that. And then at the end of the day, we're going to look at some cases of patients with GI bleeding to discuss in the room what we do with some expert opinion. Mainly, we think around blood thinners, the DOACs and the warfarins and what have you, what to do if patients bleed on those, or what should you do to stop patients bleeding with them, etc. And then I've got a talk, which I think will be great, from a friend of mine called Vats, who was a research registrar in JAG in London when I was working there. And he's done his postgraduate research onto incident reporting, safety and endoscopy. And he's done some really quite interesting and novel work, which I think would benefit us as a community in Wales to hear about and learn from.
Yes, the agenda is really exciting, and not just because I'm biased, obviously, as part of the organising committee, but the hands-on experience in GI bleeding is something not to miss. And I would tell anyone who's listening to this podcast to openwage.org.uk and sign up to join us in the conference.
I should say, Badder, there's actually we've got a meal as well, and there's a hotel stay down the road in a really nice hotel called Morgan's, which you can book into, and great if anybody would like to come and join us for that, for a bit of a social sort of chat, and nice to unwind a little bit as well and get together as a group. So I hope you can come and join us for that as well.
Definitely, it'll be really nice to see people who might have travelled far that we don't tend to see often face to face. At the end of the podcast, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Dr. John Green for joining me in the inaugural Wage podcast in a series called Wage Pod.
Thank you, Badr.
This is going to be a regular series. We'll be interviewing eminent figures within the field of gastroenterology, hepatology and endoscopy within Wales, the UK and internationally. To keep up with our news and to find out more about our podcasts, please find us on your podcasting app as Wage Pod. Follow us on our Twitter at wage_media. And for more information about Wage, please visit us at wage.org.uk. Thanks for listening and stay tuned.